Destroy the Destroyers, episode 2. So, I'm gonna start this with like a pre-cap before the recap. This week's episode of the Destroy podcast was called Bread and Butter. And I started it, and I thought that I was having a fever dream because I was like, I swear I've heard this before. And it turns out, and this is a super nitpicky thing, but it turns out that this was a rebroadcast. This was something that they did a few months ago called the $300,000 stylist. And it's a good business practice, a good practice to keep a library and an archive of the stuff that you've already made because you can reuse it. But most of the time, in terms of podcasts or video work in a feed like this, you label it as some sort of like recast, or this is a second revisited version, or just something along those lines. It's just usually a nice thing to do for your audience to not just relabel the same content. My goodness, not to just relabel the same content and feed it to you again. But that's a total nitpick. So I got my Yeti. It's not a Stanley, I know. We're gonna get into the episode. All right,
we're gonna be talking about the $372,000 hairdresser.
Do you know how much money that is?
That's a lot of money.
I was gonna make it the $372,562nd.
Right.
$2.
You know what would be cool? If this was an interview with somebody using their methods that had actually made like that kind of money, or like a lot of money, and kind of illustrating how these methods had affected their business and how they had implemented them and how they had grown to be doing $372,000. But I guess that's not what we're getting.
All as creatives round up and down. I mean, I think most people do, but I think especially as creatives, we're just like, oh, I made 100,000. Oh, I made 200,000.
Everything's exaggerated or minimized.
Right.
Like,
it's never like
there's no
rounded.
There's no truth.
But if you ask,
I have no money or I made so much money.
Sure.
But if you ask hairdressers like how much they make, especially after,
it's kind of like anniversaries, right? Where it's like we celebrate sort of like, for whatever reason, humans are like every 5, 10, 15, So if it's been like, how long have you been in business? Oh, about 10 years. Right? It's not like, we've been in business 10 years and 3 months and 44 days. Like, no, you just kind of,
$100,000.
You're a human person.
They didn't make $100,000. They usually made $162,000.
That's a big jump.
Or the person that makes $200,000 really made $245,000.
Right. That's
if you're
also
not making that much,
a big jump, but
a coach should be. But
should be working with a coach to do those numbers. But again, there's nobody on this podcast showing us how they did those numbers.
Absolutely possible.
I think there's this belief that hairdressers have about, once I hit 6 figures, and by the way, 6 figures can mean $999,999, right? It's not just 100,000.
You're right.
I think
it does go up to just under $1 million.
The fact that you can make 6 figures in it, it's not just 100,000.
Yeah, I also think that happens because once 6 figures happens, like they're actually profiting after taxes, after expenses, 6 figures. Nothing else really matters. That's why I said, do you know how much money that is? Because the reality is like that for an individual, maybe not for a family home. Also depends on the city you live in, but even in New York, we weren't making that. And when we started to really make money, it was still so great.
Right.
So, recently saw a statistic that said that about 18% of the United States makes $100,000 a year. So to put that in perspective, right? Like making $100,000 is good income. Whether that is pre-tax, post-tax, that's up to debate for yourself. But like, that's a good income in the United States, and I'm going to venture to guess that that would be a good income sort of globally.
But like 6 figures, that's what I was like, I don't think people can wrap their heads around actually profiting and having in your bank account 6 figures, even on a smaller scale of 100,000.
You can't have on a smaller scale of 100,000, like that. Less than 100,000 is less than 6 figures. But having 100,000 in your bank account, now that is a completely different realm. And I have no idea what the statistics are on that, but I would venture to say that it is very few people that have in their savings account $100,000.
Yeah, I would say half of my students have about $100,000 in savings, which is always.
Well, you're actually with our future proof students doing
I'm doing a challenge.
I disagree.
Of building their savings, but a lot of them already have $100,000 in savings, and and to me, that's a six-figure hairdresser.
Yeah.
Oh.
Not that I make.
Okay, so now we're changing the definition. Okay, so we were talking about like how much you were, producing and like what your take home was every year as being six figures, but now that's out. Now you're only six figures if it's in your savings account. Got it.
Six figures in revenue, but that I actually have six figures in my savings account.
Yeah.
That's mine.
That has always been something
Sure.
we've said. We've said it on stage so many times. Like, if you only have like $1,000 in your savings account, you're a $1,000 hairdresser because where that kind of stamp.
No, that's not true.
Stamp
four
of
figure.
Yeah. That stamp of wealth comes from what you have in investments and in savings.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily mean you have to have $100,000 in your savings account. I mean, that's great if you do.
Wait, he just said that is what you needed. So now what he said isn't true, but what she's saying is true.
But I honestly would you should be making money off of that or investing it. But
most savings accounts have interest rates, so you are making money off of it, but
I think something that happens is people be like, I'm a six-figure hairdresser, but they only brought in $100K in revenue.
And took home like 87.
Sure. So to be fair, you're right. If you are going to be producing $100,000 in services, and if you are a stylist in the traditional salon model, you're probably taking home commission-wise somewhere 40 to 50%. And if you're in a place where you're accepting gratuities, you're probably taking home roughly 20%. So out of that $100,000 that you would be producing, you're taking home $50,000 in commissions, and then probably about $20,000 in gratuities. So you're probably closer to about $70,000 take home.
Like 60.
Yeah.
Let's be real with inflation and expenses and rents and horrible.
Inflation, expenses, and a rent as an individual on your income, that has no bearing. It doesn't change anything about the income that you're taking home, right? It's still the revenue that goes into your, whatever your taxes at the end of the year is saying, I made $70,000.
Salons that are charging crazy commissions.
Yeah, and if you are in a commission salon, to even profit that, you would have to bring in over like 200
in revenue, for sure. If you're in a commission salon and you're bringing 200 in revenue, you are absolutely profiting.
Okay. There is a real, I don't know if it's a misunderstanding or what it is, but they use the terms revenue, income, and profiting almost as if they're interchangeable, and they and they're not all the same, right? Your revenue is the top dollar coming in as a business, okay? Your profit is what's left after all of your expenses are paid, including payroll. And income to an individual, it really doesn't have any bearing from the previous two, right? Like that's as the employee what you're getting paid.
You'd probably open a second.
You should absolutely.
Yeah, if you're working for someone else and you're bringing that much cash, it's probably time to.
Yeah, that's a comfy, cozy life. I mean, what's.
Oh! I gotta back it up. 2 seconds.
And rents and horrible salons that are charging crazy commissions.
It up too far.
Yeah, and if you are in a commission salon, to even profit that, you would have to bring in over like 200
in revenue, for sure. If you're in a commission salon and you're bringing 200 in revenue, you are absolutely profiting.
And you should probably open a salon.
You should absolutely.
Okay, I know I already hit this point, but that is completely void of any context, right? If you're bringing in 200,000, you're absolutely profiting. What is the rent? Are you in some really high rent district? What's the products, right? Like, how many other expenses do you have for the business? Like, there is no blanket statement of like, you are absolutely, like, ugh. But this next point was the one that I wanted to hit.
Yeah, if you're working for someone else and you're bringing that much cash, It's probably time to.
Yeah, that's a comfy cozy. Like, I mean,
here we go.
We've actually worked with a lot of people in their early 20s that are bringing in that kind of money, and I think without a coach and without someone to guide you, like an accountant, a mentor, a financial advisor, it can get really, what's the word? Frivolous?
Yeah, you start
reactive.
All right, I missed my pause. What she said after David said bringing in $200,000, and then they said you should absolutely open your own salon, and she said, yeah, that's a comfy, cozy life. There is so much value to working in a place that is going to support you to do those sort of numbers, to allow you to have that kind of income, where you then have the ability to walk in, do your job, fill your role, and then at the end of the day, be able to check in and check out, right? As long as you're supported and you feel appreciated and the culture is a good place, like that is a solid spot to be in. Because not everybody that is an awesome, successful stylist should be an owner. If you love doing hair, then be an awesome hairstylist that crushes it, right? If you are feeling like I actually want to step away from being behind the chair, if I want to spend less time doing hair, but more time facilitating everybody else doing their thing, then being an owner can be a really powerful spot for you to be in. But just the idea of like, I'm a super successful stylist, and as a result, I need to open my own salon, that can actually often be a recipe for disaster. A great book on this topic is called The E-Myth, or The Entrepreneurial's Myth. It's been around for a long time, but it is fantastic.
Yeah, you get reactive with it, you start spending it. I mean, I don't even have to pretend that it's not this person or that person. There's so many stories of people that have made great money.
I've done it.
Yeah, because of a good season or a good year.
I was bopping all around New York City spending money.
Before COVID?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then,
it is easy, like money in, money out.
Other things happen personally in our lives, and we don't have it, or we then have to spend a chunk of it. I'm not, it's funny talking to both of us, because I'm not a saver, I'm a spender, and Sid is a saver, not a spender, which is funny, because you are a spender.
I am a spender.
But you are more a saver. And
I'm always looking at my money.
Yeah, you're
always.
Yeah.
Probably checked it 3 times since we've been sitting here.
Really?
No.
I look at my bank account.
You don't look at me.
I maybe look at my bank account once a week.
Well, for some people, like, it causes them reactivity, even if there is wealth in there, because it's just like,
people are weird about money.
Where like Chase or Wells Fargo, and they want you to sign up for a bank account, and it's like, it shows the person's bank account, it's like $23,000 in savings. I'm like, that is not a normal person's bank account.
Okay, so point being, when those commercials come up, somebody's job in the marketing department or at Chase is to choose a number that will appeal to the majority of people, but isn't going to be out of the realm of possibility, but isn't also going to be like, yeah, right, that's not a real person. So in a Chase commercial where they show $23,000 in the bank, that is aspirational to some, realistic to others. But I want to go back to how we started this episode saying, well, we have clients with $100,000 in their savings account. Okay, but now we're saying like having $23,000 in the account is not a real person.
Who are they advertising? But
aspirational.
I always look at averages, and I believe currently, and someone's going to probably correct me through DMs.
It's me.
I don't know. By the time this comes out, it might be a different statistic.
The average American has less than $5,000 in savings.
Yes, no, that is
probably
true.
Right.
Because I'm teaching an economic class coming up, and I was looking at those numbers. So
less than $5,000 in their savings.
Most people are very unprepared for an emergency situation.
Not awful.
If you have a family of four,
no, for an individual, I'm talking.
For an individual, no. But I think
it's tough.
That's a crazy number, and I know that we can blame the economy and we can blame whatever, but I also think there's this level of unlocking the idea that you can make over $100,000. I think even in other industries, it's like you make $100,000, and after that, it's like, oh, I make $100,000. Oh, what do you really make? I make $120,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's like it's almost like those extra thousands.
But then when you hit 200, then you really emphasize like.
Yeah, we have benchmarks, especially as like.
I don't understand. In some casual conversation where somehow we're actually going to be talking about the income that we make, nobody's going to be that specific. This is such a weird thing to focus in on, but like, if you're having a conversation about what you do, you're going to round to the nearest whole number. And if you're not trying to brag about it or be like braggadocious, like, oh, look at me, I don't understand what the challenge here is.
I think it's like 100,000, and then you don't really talk about it until 250.
Yeah.
And then after 250, you might not even talk about it until $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
And we forget that
I would say $500,000 is probably in there.
We can live somewhere in the middle, especially if I own a business, right? I can live somewhere and profit in the 400,000, so those 600,000, or like, and it's just always funny because I have a few students that they are profiting in the 600,000 realm, right?
Yeah.
Profiting in a 600,000 realm. I'm sorry, but I'm going to need somebody to come on this podcast who owns a salon that has $600,000 in profit, not revenue, okay? Now you might be watching this going like, well, what do you know, Ben? Okay, the best revenue year that my business ever had was 2.3475 million. 2.3 million. I don't know the extra rounded out numbers. All right? But on a profit scale, it wasn't $600,000, right? Like, there's a difference between revenue and profit.
And then a lot of it goes back into the business, whatever, but
so that then eliminates the profit, dude.
It's not $1 million. Even though it's more than they've ever made, because it's not 1 million, they don't feel good about it.
Sure, because they haven't hit maybe what their ultimate goal is.
That's what hairdressers, like, we're always trying to get to this like imaginary number, and then we hit it, and then we're like, well, it's, you know, and then when they hit $1 million, like, it's not 2 million.
Yeah.
There's like never.
I'm going to give an agreeance here. I think that oftentimes everybody sets their sight on a big goal and does not celebrate the benchmarks along the way. So I'm in agreement on this. But at the same time, if you've got that $1 million goal, or you got that multi-location goal, or you've got that whatever goal, even though we do have to celebrate the little victories along the way, sometimes it's like, damn, I didn't get there quite yet, did I?
Nothing's good enough.
A layer of satisfaction, but you know, I think the whole movement in our industry about 6-figure hairdressers, I think that was really helpful.
I think it really was. I mean, even for me as a young stylist at the time when that became like a whole movement, I was like, what?
It definitely pushed people professionally to want to step up and do more.
That was what? When I was...
Who started that?
Probably been around about 20 years or so, maybe? 15, 20 years?
I think so. I might be making this all up.
I took his course.
Yeah.
I think it was called 6-Figure Hairdresser.
I think so too.
That's what I'm trying to remember. Little notebook.
It's really good. It's still around. Yes. I would highly recommend still following
I took that. And then there's some other ones now that I can't think of that some people have taken.
I mean, it's in everyone's verbiage if you're a business coach.
Right.
I'm sure.
But I want our verbiage to be...
It's in the verbiage because making 6 figures, like I said up front, less than 18% of the United States does it. So if you can do it as an individual, that's good money.
3. $72,586,000 or $100 hairdresser. I can't even say the number. But like, that's probably why people round up.
To put that into perspective, like, their model is a commission model, that you should work in a commission-based salon, okay? So to say that you are going to, as a single stylist individual, be taking home $372,000 in income, well, double that. So now you're talking about needing to do $740,000 in revenue, in service revenue, to get that payout. Like, I understand the idea of what we're talking about here, but there's also some realism about what is actually possible. And I will say I'm a believer in anything is possible. But like, are we coaching to the idea that you're going to be doing $700,000 in revenue as a single person? Come on.
Yeah, because I also think there's this level of you do hit a wall as an individual.
Right.
Not saying that you couldn't make that money. You would have to charge a lot of money.
You mean like with the people in our comments that
Okay, I'm gonna throw some quick math in here. So if you had to do $740,000 a year, all right, divide that by 50 weeks. Going to give you 2 weeks off. You got to do $14,080 a week. So if we take that, we're going to work a full regular schedule, 40 hours a week. All you have to do is charge $370 an hour. I don't know, man. That seems pretty expensive for a haircut. $370 an hour.
you could never make that as a hairdresser. We're like, open a business.
Open a business. You absolutely could. Eventually, in order to make that kind of wealth, which is completely possible.
Just opening a business is not the answer.
So many salon owners that are hitting beyond that number in wealth, in profit, in revenues.
What is in wealth, in profit, in revenues? Those are three different things.
You have to invest in other people. You have to hire people into your business. That is the only way. Unless you're charging like $1,000 an hour, which is fine. That's also possible.
Even then, you have to be booked.
But if you're not willing to do it,
if you're booked out, charging that.
You might be able to get one person to do $1,000 an hour, but building a clientele at that for the vast majority of regular people, that's like not even feasible.
We have partnered with Hairdresser to get pro access today.
Do you think people are afraid to make more than a certain amount? Like, I think everyone has a threshold.
Yeah, I think because then it starts to get scary that you have more to lose. Like, I think when people are living paycheck to paycheck and things are on a smaller scale, there's always like I have to do this, I have to do this. That's why I think a lot of people in our program, they instantly start making more money because we really look at their finances. We look at their expenses. We look at everything out we throw it all out on the table. Instantly and we figure out their hourly rate based on the profits that they want to make.
So there is a formula for this. If you look at what the operating costs for your business are and what the desired profit is, then you can figure out what are the revenues that are going to need to be generated and then divide that by the available hours that the business is going to be operating. Okay? So kind of like what I just did with backing out those prices. Like, there is a formula. It's not just guesswork trying to figure out what should I charge.
Work, how much they work, and their expenses, right? So we're including everything in that. And then they start to make money.
Well,
and then all of a sudden it's like,
you don't just start.
Crap, I'm not working as much. I'm making more money. And then we start to panic because we're not doing the hairdresser hustle.
I don't think people panic.
That should be a TikTok dance.
I don't think that people would panic if their revenues were truly staying the same or growing if they were working less.
Do the hustle. Hustle. It's less than 6 words. I think there's a rule about that. But
yeah, the hairdresser hustle, and then they start to panic. And so we, as coaches, as conscious coaches, have to coach our students through that mindset of like, we should have never been working the way that we were working before. Working hard and working ourselves into the ground are two different things.
Sure.
You can work.
Busyness does not necessarily mean productivity, but it helps.
Hard and also not be in a hustle mindset. So
I love working.
Good.
I love working too. I
Awesome.
also have to set very clear boundaries with myself, which is a lot of restrictions.
For sure.
To not work on the weekends because
no work on Sundays. I agree with you.
My psyche, or not work after certain times. And working for a hairdresser nowadays is not just doing hair. We're running businesses. We have our whole back end, whether you're an individual or a salon owner. We have social media, which is a whole freaking job.
It's true. There's a lot.
The social media.
You can do a lot of your social media while your color's developing.
Hairdressers
you don't have to take it home with you.
grow their income, and certain generations like millennials and Gen X we're very overwhelmed by social media because of its limitlessness.
Yeah.
And then you have these young kids that are like coming out of school and starting at salons, and they don't want to do an apprentice program, which I don't blame you.
Yeah.
Dude, okay. This is a big pet peeve of mine. Like, an apprentice program has value, okay? Schools, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt by saying that they're doing the best that they possibly can. But the stuff that they are required to teach to get people to pass state board, and the type of clientele that is typically coming to a salon, or to a school, I'm sorry, is not going to be the same type of clientele and the same type of work to the same caliber that is expected if you're coming into a salon, especially if you are trying to position yourself as an awesome, high-end, smart salon.
Want to wait their turn or pay their dues, which I don't blame you. And when they go out there, they're kind of ready. And I know some people are like, no, these hairdressers,
they have to do this. No, like,
educated.
Let them go.
Like, they've been watching YouTube.
Okay, I'm pausing this before we go forward again, because coming in and developing somebody's skill set, I think, is vastly misunderstood. And so the important part is that as the trainer of having somebody come in, you have to understand that, or you have to deliver the fact that you are doing this to benefit them, not to hold them back, right? This way, so that when you go out there and you get on the floor and you start handling clients at full price for the services, that you will be as confident as possible, that your client will have the best experience as possible, so that then your retention and your new requests and people coming back to see you is as high as possible while you're getting started. If you take somebody in and they're not prepared and they're not good and they're not delivering the service or the styles that people want, you are going to actually kill their confidence, because their clients do not come back, they do not get referrals, and that is one of the hardest things when you're first getting started, is this desire to go, 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 and then to be met with like failure immediately. It's really, really tough.
Watching TikTok, they've been cutting their friends' hair at home. They've been playing with more chemicals than we were able to play with, because they sell it at Sally's and they sell it at CVS.
Sally's has been around for a long time.
I'm not saying that they learned traditionally, but they've been active in hair longer than we have.
I don't believe any of that. Yes, social media and YouTube has given exposure to more things, but I think the people that have wanted to be in hair have always found ways to find those products and play with it and do that stuff. My argument would be that because of the exposure and more exposure to bad education, that it has actually made it harder when people go, because they think, hey, I know this. I heard somebody tell me that I don't need to be an apprenticeship. They told me I don't need to pay my dues, that I should be able to just go. And so there's more effort needed to be able to train good practices instead of bad practices.
For school. And I think it's really cool, and I think they use social media and they're like, oh no, I'm gonna make $100,000 my first year.
The confidence is so inspiring.
The confidence is great.
Like,
the realisticness,
these people that
the
come
realism
in and have
of
that
it,
confidence, like, because you don't have
not
that
the same.
confidence. Instead, be like, I couldn't do it, but I'm gonna give you the chance to show me what you got.
Sure.
You're still in charge as a salon owner. If they can't live up to that expectation, you can coach them or you can let them go. Those are your options.
It's always surprising to me when I meet a salon owner who is upset that
that someone wants to charge more than them?
Yes.
I'm like, you know, that hurts your business. Your ego right now is fully hurting your business.
Can certainly understand.
They'll
this
say
dynamic.
things like, well, they want to charge this, but I don't even charge that. I'm like, that's okay.
And we're not seeing that that's a problem, or it's okay.
It could be a problem.
Both options.
Yeah. One, you probably should be charging
It could
more.
not be
and
a
two,
problem. But
they should not have to pay for your lack of growth.
agreed.
And you make money when they make money, so why wouldn't you want them?
I'm agreeing with this one. There are people that they grew their business and they developed their business at a time where like they were high priced, and usually, eventually, maybe that clientele gets stuck on a fixed income, right? Because when they started, when they were young and they grew, and they're at $50 for a haircut, and that's really expensive to somebody of that generation. But now you're coming up, now you got this new generation where they're thinking like $50 for a haircut, like that's really inexpensive, depending on your area. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, all right? But so like, yes, there are certain situations where like demographically, like, or, you know, age-wise or whatever the case may be, like you shouldn't be limiting the next group's growth just because one group doesn't want to get there. I'm in agreement with this.
To make more. It's just really interesting to me, but I think the concepts of like, I think that breaks that six-figure world too. Like, well, I don't even make six figures. And I hear a lot of salon owners.
But why not? Yeah.
And I hear a lot of salon owners that'll be like, oh yeah, I don't, my team made more than me. and they're like mad about it. And I'm like, well, there's two
Like,
things
you do know
here.
if your team made more than you, your salon's probably profiting, and you shouldn't be doing hair.
something's
Again,
going on
that's
here.
not how it
But
works.
it's just interesting to me that salon owners will do that and that people will think about money in that way. And I want people to break through the concept that 6 figures is $100,000. 6 figures is anything up into
$1 million.
$1 million. And there's a whole
Thank you for the
journey,
math
there's
lesson.
a whole world within there. And I think if we don't talk about it, we don't think it exists. Even like politics and economics now, it's like there's the poor and the rich. Like we don't even want to talk about the middle class is hurting. Yeah, but there's still a
whole
giant
journey.
middle class.
Yeah.
Middle class would be
Difficult is
defined
not
as
what I'm saying,
under 100,000.
because it is difficult at the middle class. Even our company is a company
We're
that's
still a small company.
we're a small company.
We're still growing.
We pay the highest taxes because we're in that middle tax
Is
bracket.
that true?
But it's
Small
like
businesses pay the highest
people
tax
like
bracket?
kind of forget that there's this whole other realm. And I think if we just remember that 100,000 is not where it ends and $1 million isn't where it starts.
Yeah.
That there's something in the middle. And I always celebrate
That would be-
like when I hear my team like, oh, we brought in, this year $468,000. I'm like, I'll say like that's amazing. They're
As
like,
a salon, that would be good.
I wish it was $1 million. It's like,
Sure.
$468,000
Don't
is
shit on
really
your
good.
success.
Yeah. I'm in
You're like,
agreement
I got to
here.
take
Celebrate
home
the small
a
victories.
$14,000 profit
but-
this month for myself, and the salon
And
still
then I'll
profited.
follow it up like this, but it was really slow.
But it was, or gotta do better. It's like give yourself a beat to live in your.
All right, she just said something about taking home $17,000 in profit or something like that. Like, again, is the business profiting or is the individual income making that kind of income?
Or they'll say,
And $17,000 a month in income, multiply that over a year, you're at what, 114, 140, something like that? $1,000 a year, that's a lot.
Accomplishments.
oh, so-and-so quit. And I'm like, how much did you bring in? Oh, we brought in the most we ever brought in. I'm like, where's the missing, link here that people are trying to appreciate it? But anyways, that's all I have to say about that. My $372,000 hairdresser concept.
All right, I really feel like the math ain't mathin' in this episode. There are some things that I agreed with in terms of confidence, mentality. They slipped a little bit talking about people coming out of beauty school and education and apprentice programs. I think that as long as an apprentice program is actually laid out and has progress and is there and is not just saying, I'll let you know when you're ready. I'll let you know when you're ready is not an apprentice program versus things that have actual laid out classes and laid out schedules and laid out expectations. But yeah, man, I don't know. The math ain't mathin' on this one. As we said, thinking about how they function with services and hours, you would have to be either charging so much per hour or doing so many hours as an individual to be taking home the kind of money that they are throwing around in this $372,000. I really, really, really wish that they had somebody that is in their program, on the podcast, to be able to say, I am this person. I am doing this. I am doing these numbers because of their help. I just don't think that person really exists.